Hey guys, so for the second part of this series, we'll be actually diving into the code, like actually, getting the project set up. So if you guys haven't already, please check out the first part of the series. The link will be in the description. And here's the branches, the repo. The link to the repo will also be in the description. So this is what we covered, as well as like a general overview we're going to cover throughout the whole series. And as you see down here, we have the second part of the branch on my repo. So this is like what we're going to be arriving or working towards the end. So without further ado, let's get started, just because there's so much to get covered in this video. So as you guys remember, basically in the first part of the branch, we just display a simple text widget or simple hello worlds within the material app with basic theming and whatnot. So this is how it would look on the simulator and emulator. Alright, that's pretty much it. So why don't we close these for memory's sake and get started. Cool. So yeah, so here's the news API, and here's so as mentioned in the first part, please get the API key if you haven't already, just because we'll actually be using it now, just to get the API response data, and then we're gonna map it accordingly. So here's the Postman get endpoints. Alright, let that load up first, of course. Alright, so get call, then the endpoints, top headlines path, and then Google News source query parameter. So once we make a get call, yeah, we're gonna basically log to see that we actually get this response. Cool. So why don't we do just that? So go to the Flutter Dart package manager or pub.dev, and then type in news API underscore clients. Take it to the pub page, and then we'll actually copy these snippets after we install. So as you'd expect to install a plugin, just copy and paste that as well as this version in the pubspec.yaml file. Okay, and then flutter pub get. Alright, so let that get the dependency downloaded. And then as soon as that's successfully downloaded, we'll import the package. So if I remember correctly, it'd be something like package. Alright, here it is. Yep, it's the news API client.dart file. Okay, so for referencing and actually using it, go back to the README part, and we could just go as far as just copying this snippet. So yeah, as I said in the first part, we'll be incrementally tackling these to-do statements. So namely, we'll be adding a feature builder widget, and then that's basically to handle our async computations, right? So it takes in a feature parameter. In our case, right, we have a function here that has the async and await modifiers, and then here's our function. Okay, so cool. So we'll basically instantiate the news API client object here, which takes in an API key as its argument. So why don't you just paste it here? In my case, for confidential purposes, I'll just be referencing it from a static string file. So keys.news API key, and then so as soon as you instantiate the client objects, and then if you want to go deeper into the files here, so it takes in an endpoint object. In our case, is top headlines, which is exactly what we want. And then if you open up this as well, it has some parameters it takes in here. So matching against our Postman calls here, we actually just want the sources, right? As you see here with source parameter, and then Google News. So get rid of this category arg, and then just type in sources, which basically takes a list, as you see down here. So in our case, it's just a list of size 1. So if I remember correctly, it's how you create a list in Dart. It's like a simple array, and then yeah, Google News. Okay, cool. So every time we call this function, why don't we just log it for now? We can rename this something like get news sources. And then logging as in a simple print statement will do. So response, and then we could using VS Code's debugger, we could just set the breakpoints here, and then to actually invoke this function, we need to use what's called a future builder widget. So just replace this temporary container widget here, and then pass in a future builder. So it'll take in a type. So considering we don't have the models created yet to handle the mapping logics for serialization, deserialization, we'll just use the generic type in Dart, which is just simply dynamic. Okay, and then we just pass in the respective parameters. So in our case is the future, right, which will be the get new sources function we just created, and then it'll take in the builder widget, which we want to actually pass in. In our case, we won't really have a widget as of now, so we could just pass in some temporary, like container or center widgets to display some text. Okay, so it'll take in some args, as you see here, builder, and then go to this reference, async widget builder. Okay, cool. So just take in a build context and then the async snapshot here. I'll go a little more over in detail what the async snapshot is soon, but let's just pass it in for now. Alright, so copy paste this one. Okay, so the type will be dynamic. Okay, and then this will be the callback basically. Alright, so yeah, so the snapshot here, so as you open up this, it's basically for the async computation, and then the snapshot is what the data or the error, as it says here, will be determined. So we could just create simple conditionals here. So if the snapshot, and then using some of its getter functions here, so if it has data, then that's good, right? That's how we know we got some data returned from our backends. So in our case, we could just go as far as just displaying a center widget, and then saying something like, so with the text widget, we could say success. Okay, else if it has an error, no, not data, error, return text that says something like error. Okay, otherwise, which will be a loading state, right? So this will basically, so this block right here, it'll just keep running until we actually have some snapshot data returned to then fire off these, conditional statements here. So in our case here, we could say loading instead. All right, cool. So why don't we set breakpoints here as well, just to justify what I just explained. Okay, so I think that's everything we need. Okay. Let's see if that runs successfully. So open up the simulator. Okay, so in our case, we should be using the debugger with VS Code. So let's do that. So start debugging. Debug console. Okay, cool. So while that builds, ideally we're going to get something like this, what you see in Postman, but instead a map. So the key value pairs of all these. Fingers crossed. Alright, let's make this a little smaller, that we get a better view. Okay, cool. So as I mentioned, it'll initially start off at the loading state. So let's go to the next breakpoint. So see the loading text widget here. Okay, so the response. So notice that it matches Postman, right? So you get status and then total results, 99, and then the actual data, right? So articles of the headline object. So yep, here it is. So the key value pairs for each type, and which will map real soon. Okay, oops. then next breakpoints. So yeah, we just printed it out here, and then unfortunately it's ellipses here, but it's okay, we can work our way around it. And then there you go. So the snapshot, notice it has data right there of what we just debugged. And then this will ideally change to success, what you see there. Cool. All right, we could exit out of there, close the simulator. All right, awesome. So let's actually get into, so notice how we have the dynamic type, which is obviously temporary. We want to like actually pass in some models now, right? So in order to do that, if you go to the Flutter docs, right, and then JSON serialization under the data and backend section. So here's the docs, and then let's scroll down all the way here. So right here, serializing JSON inside model classes. So this is how you want to do it, right? So remember how we have a response that has a map of, the key value types. So we could just, just copy and paste this for now. And then create a model class, something like headline response .dart. Paste that in there. All right, so we're gonna work our way down within these, the JSON response we have here. So starting out, we have like the root model, right, which will have these three properties here, and then work our way down. See, notice how we have a potential, object for source here, and then some other properties as well. Okay, so we could change this name for now to headline. Okay, so so as I said, like how we have a response, that's a map type. What this is basically doing is that it takes in the JSON string, right, and then basically returns it as a headline object based on the key value that we map from the JSON. So in our case, we have a status here. All right, so that'll just be a string, and then total results, which is, as expect, an int, and then the articles, right? So we obviously don't have the articles object yet, which is a array of articles. So we could just do something simple as what we did before. So we could just temporarily put in dynamic, and then the property name will be articles. Okay, cool. And then our constructor for this object will just, pass in what we just created for the properties of this model. So this dot total results, this dot articles. Okay. Cool. So we'll deal with this later, actually, just because we have to create our other child models first. So we could just temporarily comment that out for now. All right, and then copy and paste for our other models. So next will be the article object. Call something like article. Okay. So it'll be similar to what we just did. So it'll have properties here within this block. But just to be why don't we just create the most child model here? So in our case, source, right? So same idea. Source, fortunately it's just two strings. So first we're presented with an ID, and then the name. And that's pretty much it. Source, ID, name. Okay, cool. So considering that we have like the the most outer model for within this nested model structure set, so we could just simply handle the serialization and deserialization from all the way from bottom to top, right? So to do that, this will be a source. Okay, so this will be the property of what we want to map the JSON value pair to the property. So it'll just simply be ID here, the ID key there, name, and name like that. Okay, and then same idea. So if you want to serialize the data into a JSON string, it'd be just like that. So name. Cool. All right, and then you just literally work your way back down. So In our case, you know, on comments, not comment again. Okay, so, okay, we should probably create our properties first for article, which could take some time. Alright, so why don't I do just that, and then I'll get back to you guys later. Alright, cool. Thanks for waiting, guys. Yeah, as you can tell, it's like a lot of properties, as you see here in Postman. It's like quite a tedious process and a lot of copying and pasting. So, alright, got that out of the way. So, one notable thing is, considering that this is a nested modeling structure, notice that, you know, the properties here are all strings, and then the child model within this article object is source. So we just pass it in there as it maps to this property here. Alright, and then lastly, we'll handle serialization as well as the serialization here and the most root objects. So we gotta replace this back. So from dynamic to article here. Alright. And then this will fortunately not be as hectic. So status here, status total results, and then lastly articles. Okay. Same idea for the serialization part. Okay, and then articles. Cool. Alright, no more errors. Okay. Awesome. So now that we have our nested model created, we want to actually pass it into what we had in our main.dar file. So replace what we had here. So dynamic could now be headline response. Alright, so yeah, we just had to import the package. I'll make sure it's successfully imported. There you go. Alright, replace all the other dynamic references. And of course, the get new sources function. So it'll basically be, instead of a map, right, considering that we handled the deserialization part in our object here, we could just replace this with just headline. Cool, so yeah. So now to invoke what we have here for the deserialization part, we just, we don't need this log anymore. Actually invoke it. So in order to do that, we just simply do something like headline dot from JSON and then pass in the response. And ideally, we'll get it mapped successfully to our object of what we just created here. Okay, cool. I think everything looks good here. Alright. So now that we have the object, why don't we go as far as also logging it, which we haven't covered yet, right? So to do that, we want to make sure, okay, so let's just start from the top, right? So the rootmost model here. So we could create a separate helper function, right? Call something like log, right? Which is void, obviously. And then we want to just, you know, invoke the print statement like we did before. And basically, we want it to look like, you know, something like this, a JSON root structure, right? So I'm just gonna, you know, for time's sake, we're just gonna copy and paste it from what I have here in a separate file. Right, so it'll be something like this. Okay. So yeah, so status there, total results, and then articles, right? But considering that we're using a string formatting here, as you see here with the $, we want to also invoke the toString overriding function, right, to make sure that it's actually serializable. So we could just override it here. So if we just type in toString, notice that it's auto-suggested here. So if I press tab, there you go. It's just created for you just like that. Okay, so we're not just gonna invoke the super parent function here. So instead, we'll just be returning our own customization here. So again, I'm gonna copy and paste into here. All right, so we got each of the properties, passing in within this serialization structure. And then lastly, considering that we had to create a custom model for source, we do it, the same thing, same idea. So override to string here. All right, and then do what we're all good at and just return a string like that. All right, cool. All right, so if that all works without this app breaking, this log function will successfully run or invoke. So to do that, we just call it then, right? So we could do it like here, right? So note that, our async snapshot returns a type of headline. So if you wanted to, access that, we could just do something like snapshot and then data, and then it'll be, mapped to our, if I just hover over here, it should be a headline type, right? Which, okay, okay, there you go. See at the top right there, headline. I wish I could point and show, okay. Yeah, right here, there you go. So headline type there, and then log. All right, cool. All right, so I think we're good here. Why don't we try running right now? So we could do on both, iOS and Android. So let me open up the emulator as well. All right, so yeah, oops. Delete this. So to do that, just populate what I have here as my emulators. The simulator is up and running. All right, I'm gonna actually run this. Okay, this is in the same state, but that won't be for long. Cool. All right, so we can start off the simulator first. Yeah, so Flutter run. Okay, as promised, we'll start off the simulator first. Here it is. So yeah, while that builds, I'm just gonna mention that, UI side of things, you'll see the same thing, but considering that we successfully mapped, or hopefully successfully mapped the models accordingly, we'll get a log, of like the overall objects. Okay, cool. So notice that we have an error here. Okay. Okay, instead of just running Flutter run, why don't we try debugging to see what the error might be? Okay, turns out it's gonna run the emulator instead, which is totally fine considering it's cross-platform. Alright, so it's the loading state here. Okay, we got our response map. Okay, list dynamic is not a subtype. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. I figured it out. So notice that I mentioned earlier that the articles property will be an array, right, or list. So considering that, we just have a prop or model of this article instead of with a list, we want to actually map it, right? So to do that, we want to, actually convert it to a list, right? So that way it's actually serialized or deserialized in this case. We could close that. It's redundant at this point. Okay. So to do that, we just have a typecast here as list, and then dot map here, and then for each index, or I in this case, we want to make sure that we deserialize each of the JSON objects of article. like this. So from JSON and then the given index and then .toList. Alright, so theoretically, like, you know, this is like what we want, right? The list, so this should all work. Okay, so why don't we try running this again? And this time it should work. Okay, another error, let's see. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Turns out that, so I forgot to deserialize the source object as well, right? So here, right? So we, you know, successfully deserialized the articles list, right? But now we want to also do it here, which I'm certain that this is the last one remaining for, you know, what's blocking us from proceeding forward. So let's do just that. So use the deserialization function we had earlier, and then pass in the key value pair of source, and then we cast it as a map. Alright, so now this should work, and I swear it will. Flutter run. Here we go. Let's do this. Alright, there it is, the success message, and then the log as well. Right, so, you know, maps or similar to what you see in the Postman, right? So here it is, and then yeah, it's ellipses there, but note that, you know, the status is okay, and then we finally got what we wanted, success. Alright, so as promised, I'll also be showing the Android emulator. So let's stop this for now. Q. Okay, close this one. And then the emulator here. Okay, if I remember correctly, there's actually an issue with how the emulator is rendered under like the screen capture, what I'm doing right now, QuickTime. So yeah, this is not what we want. The layers don't seem to be intact, so let me go ahead and fix that really quick. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that once again. So this is only an emulator thing, right? So device ideally should work fine, but otherwise, leave a comment leave a comment below if it doesn't. I'm very curious. But on my ends, right, it worked. So, and this is just temporary, as we're not just going to display some center widgets, right? In reality, we'll have like a list with its own background. So this is what I ended up doing. I just put in a container widget with a background color of black, and then I just moved the feature builder widget within the child parameter. All right, so if I do a hot reload, this should just show the success message, and there it is. All right, double check and make sure that there's no breaking changes on the simulator. Okay, I don't need this anymore, and then I swear I'm done. Yeah, apologize, a lot of content was covered here. Next time. And there it is, success message, text widget, as well as the log down here. All right, whew, that was a lot covered. Sorry for doing that all out to you guys at once, but yeah, I'm just glad that we were able to, like, you know, work around this. So cool. Yeah, just if you guys have any questions, if they're like, you know, some of these things aren't working on your end, just feel free to leave a comment below, or just preferably reach me out via Twitter. The Twitter handle is in the description. And yeah, that's about all I got. Yeah, the next part we'll go dive deeper into like these to-do statements. And as I mentioned before, if you wanted to just pull down and compare what I have here against the, you know, part 2 branch, go right ahead. But yeah, just let me know if you guys have anything on your mind. So cool. All right, till next time. See you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.